If you like today's content, please like, subscribe, comment down below, and share. Thank you.
Extraterrestrials in my room, multidimensional beings in my room. I was just always aware that they were there.
I can't remember. Anyway, so do you have a coffee or water? Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right. Because I live on caffeine. That's my.
I try not to.
You know what? Okay, so I'm very happy to say that over the years, many articles have come out supporting the benefits of coffee. So that keeps me going.
Caffeinated.
It keeps me caffeinated because I'm thinking I'm not going to quit yet. You keep coming out with these positive reports.
Yeah, I love coffee. I mean, I would IV it if I could. But I got to do the water. I live in Arizona.
It really is better. Yeah.
Coffee's a dehydrator.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, cheers, Rebecca Hardcastle Wright, and welcome to Coffee and UFOs. So you're keeping hydrated. I'm keeping caffeinated. Rebecca Hardcastle Wright is the founder of the Institute for Exoconsciousness. She's been on Paranormal Now. She has quite a bit of wisdom in the world of ET, ufology topics. So she is the perfect person to ask these very direct questions, as we do on Coffee and UFOs. So the first question is, have you, Rebecca, seen a UFO?
No, I have not. I have a funny story about that. So here I am, deeply involved in extraterrestrial experiences, part of the international exopolitics movement that's starting. Steve Bassett, Michael Salla, colleagues and friends of mine, and so I'm living in Phoenix, and it's 1997, and I'm in this experiencer group with people all over Phoenix that are experiencers. So I have a big network, and I'm professionally in the field. And so 1997 happens, and the Phoenix Lights happen, one of the largest mass sightings across the United States. And guess what? I don't see it.
Nothing. That is.
Not one person called me.
Yeah.
Not one person gave me a heads up. Not one intuitive hit, go outside and look up. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew when that happened that, stay in your lane, Rebecca. Stay in your lane, stay with consciousness, stay with extraterrestrial contact. Don't go into craft research, because my path would have been dramatically different had I done that.
Yeah, but it's an odd thing to most people who find themselves, not all, but most who find themselves in the world of ufology have had some sort of sighting or experience.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've had plenty of experiences, but I have not seen a UFO.
Well, what's one of your that's more paranormal or consciousness experiences?
Well, I should clarify that, because as a child, I had craft interface as a child. But as an adult, I don't remember any.
Okay. And what was that first incident like then?
As a child?
Yeah.
We've talked about this before, but I grew up in West Virginia, in a small town in West Virginia, Clarksburg. And I was allowed to just run free. I mean, just open the door and be gone, come home and eat lunch or eat dinner or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I was the same thing when I was a child too.
Yeah, great freedom. Mm-hmm. And I have this vivid childhood memory of walking through this field, and there being a craft there, and me being taken on board. And then it just kind of all went from there in my childhood. And then from there it went to, even before that, I have memories of, around the age of 3. That's my first conscious memories, around the age of 3. That's pretty typical of people that are experiencers. A lot of them have 3-year-old or 5-year-old memories, but extraterrestrials in my room, multidimensional beings in my room. I was just always aware that they were there. So
would you categorize that as a paranormal experience? Is that fair to say?
As a child?
Hmm.
Oh, I think when you're a child, it's pretty well documented that you have a seamless psychic ability. Your conscious mind and your unconscious mind is sort of this you have almost like I guess you could say a unified brain,
Hmm.
where you're not making distinctions, and it's easy for you to go off into um, different dimensions. I mean, a lot of children, I'm a practicing hypnotherapist, so one of the things we talk about is a lot of children until the age of 3 or 4, like they're just hypnotized all the time.
Yeah.
they're in a they're
They're
in
in
an
that.
altered state.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and they can see things and hear things and talk to things, talk to people or beings or people that have passed over,
Hmm.
and that's very, very common. Now, the an interesting thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to do a teaching on this, through like a teaching platform on exoconscious coaching,
Hmm.
is that then what happens when you're a child and you're safer in alternate realities than you are at home with your mother and father or
Gotcha.
your family.
Gotcha.
So then there comes this point where you almost have to either, it's like you can live as a child with one foot in altered reality or the paranormal or the psychic world and one foot in the real world and obeying, the structures of the real world. But then if the real world isn't a place where you feel safe,
Yeah.
then you go deeper and deeper into that psychic realm.
Right.
And at
It-
what point then do you separate, or some people just stay there?
well, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, as you grow up and get older, what happens if that is the case? If you are in that world and need to be for your own mental health or survival or whatever it is.
Well, sometimes that leads to dissociation. So you become a divided self.
Hmm.
Sometimes you can, what we talk about in the Institute for Exoconsciousness, and I talk about it in Exoconscious Coaching, is there can come a time when you say, okay, I'm going to start to integrate those two parts of myself
Yeah.
in a healthy way. And I'm going to be able to live both of these places, both of these realities simultaneously. And that is very healthy and very doable. It's when a person um, has gone so deeply into the other realm that
Hmm.
they don't have 2 feet on the ground, and they're frustrated because their life isn't working out. Like, why isn't, and they start to say things like, why isn't my life working out like everybody else's? They're moving forward, they have careers, they have goals, they have exciting things happen to them, and I am not. And I think at that point, then I have a lot of clients like this, and I think at that point, then you start to say, okay, can you start putting some feet on the ground here?
Hmm.
It's not going to be as much fun. It's probably going to be a lot more difficult, but if that's what you want, that's what you're going to need to do.
Is there a future though where mainstream science and psychology and therapy um, accepts, that there are these other sort of realities and I guess psychologies, as it were, because I mean, if there are other realities, right? I mean, as a psychologist who does not accept that paradigm, that would mean they're limited to some degree, or a counselor is limited.
I
Um,
think most
no.
psychologists, if you, and psychiatrists, if you push them
Hmm.
um, to say, what's the nature of consciousness,
Yeah.
then I think most in a private conversation that I know, have admitted that yes, this is real. This is real to people. This is real life,
Yeah.
and that then you get into the whole thing of drug use and how that's very similar to this. That's another altered reality. So
Hmm.
I want to be in an altered reality the majority of my life, so I'll microdose LSD or I'll microdose mushrooms so that I'm in this other place all the time. So, and that's actually encouraged by culture, I think. And that's again where you have to look at, well, now is that working for you?
Right. So it's each case it's a subjective experience and solution. And microdosing is really interesting because more and more psychologists are looking at that as a therapeutic approach towards addiction,
Mhm.
or to combat depression or whatever it is.
Right. And
Yeah.
so what we maintain in our community of the Institute for Exoconsciousness, we at this point have not gone into drug use, DMT or whatever. We have not gone into that. That has not been our path. There's lots of experts that are in that path. That has not been our path. Our path has been, how do you become conscious as an experiencer, where you're consciously living with your feet on the ground in this 3D material reality, in the density of Earth, and then simultaneously living in, some people call it 5D, or just say living as an exoconscious experiencer. How are you doing that in a healthy way without the aid of drugs? And without saying, I'm just going to dissociate and live over here full time.
Yeah.
So it's more of an integrative approach. That's the path we've taken.
Yeah. What do you think the future of ufology should be from your perspective?
Well, I actually think that the future of ufology is going to be that a lot of ufologists are going to find that government programs were their UFOs. That,
that's going to direct
more
lives.
and more, there's going to be this uncovering of, 50 years ago we had this, and 20 years ago we had that, and we just didn't tell anybody about it. And that secret space program was actually masked by extraterrestrial and UFO communities by using us to mask it. So I believe that is one way that it can either go into a healthy dialogue, or it could go into an unhealthy dialogue of saying, well, then let's just shut the whole thing down because everything about it's not true.
Right.
So I would hope that it doesn't go into that, or shutting it down by saying, oh, it's all just pretend, it's all just fantasy, so we're just going to shut it all down.
Right. And that if the only thing that comes through first is that, hey, these crafts that you're seeing, voila, this is it. This is just secret military stuff. If that's the only disclosure, then I could totally imagine a big uproar and upheaval in the ufological community. And like you said, the lay people from the outside looking in are going to be like, haha, you all were crazy. It wasn't extraterrestrials. But just because the government says that doesn't necessarily make it true, but it would hurt the credentials of those in the field.
Well, I think there's going to have to be just a massive discernment that goes on.
Yeah.
Through this, and it's not just ufology, and it's not just UFOs, but I'm writing a book called The Exoconscious Human, Claiming Your Psychic Intelligence in a Transhuman World. And it's become very obvious to me that there's a codependent relationship between experiencers and UFO witnesses and transhumanism.
Well, it's interesting you say that too.
One props up the other.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's interesting that I think people have a relationship just with the idea of aliens and extraterrestrials coming here and visiting us.
Or
I think we can,
cyborg aliens, robotic aliens. Yeah, it goes right into the transhuman
yeah,
message.
exactly. I think a lot of people use some of the more speculative ideas about what extraterrestrials are as a savior complex sort of thing, as a, they're going to take us up, they're going to
Yeah, yeah,
help us evolve as a species.
good point.
And I think that if that's pulled out from under them, that actually might even be worse than aliens landing on the White House lawn, and disturbing religious belief, because I think that religious
So if I hear what
religion,
you're saying, you're saying that I become a more advanced human if I become transhuman.
yeah, if aliens help us get there,
Yeah,
or if
yeah.
aliens just
And
say,
that's
hey,
part of
this,
how it's being sold.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so if that's your hope, and if that's what you gives you some sort of comfort, you know,
Right, another savior. Yeah.
yeah,
And so
exactly,
for an exoconscious human would look at them and say, you're just in a cybernetics closed loop with transhumanism.
right,
And you're defining yourself through transhumanism. You're not defining yourself through your own conscious examination of who you are. So it's when you dig down underneath what exactly transhumanism is rolling out and what exactly exoconscious humans are perceiving as their future,
yeah,
that you see these broad differences in the two. But if you're staying in that mindset, like you so beautifully described, that one's going to be my savior,
hmm,
that's just another religion. and
right,
and
right.
transhumanism is another religion.
I think though with religion, now let's just say aliens come, right, and say, hey, we're here. If you're religious, I think that you have been somewhat prepared for that. Um, Culturally, it's you know, we've been doused in the
Hmm.
idea that extraterrestrials could exist and be here, and I think that it would not necessarily shake your religious foundation. But if you have already given up religion, and that is not your foundation, and this other idea about extraterrestrials being our saving grace, as it were, and then that turns out to not be true, now what do you have? You know, and I think there's a
I
lot of,
think you come back to what you've always, I mean, Martin Luther and the whole Reformation was,
mhm,
even though you don't hear much about it, but the Reformation was really about the fact that all believers were priests. It was called the priesthood of all believers.
yeah,
So that, what he was trying to do was sort of turn that dial around again and say, look at yourself. If you're a priest,
hmm,
what does that mean? What does that mean if you hold yourself out as a priest? So that would be another way to look at the value in human consciousness via religion,
hmm,
as opposed to religion like as a savior, as an objective savior. There's a good book out on that called American Cosmic. Um, Diana Pasolka.
okay,
Yeah, she's a
yeah, I'll
colleague
check
of
it out.
mine. I'd be glad to introduce you to her. Um, Yeah, well, she talks a lot about the overlay. She teaches religion at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington,
Hmm,
and she talks a lot about the overlay of witness events. She went to the Vatican Library and did a lot of research. It's a good book, a very very good book. Well done. It's actually a mainstream published book, and it was published by Oxford Press.
okay,
So
nice,
it's exciting. Yeah, to me, the fact that she got her book published by Oxford Press
yeah.
on this topic is beyond exciting.
Okay, are you familiar with Stanford University Press?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Are they more liberal in their publications than Oxford?
They're both kind of going in the same direction. They're all sort of involved in very um, sort of technocratic transhuman research.
Yeah, because I was surprised when I saw that they were publishing this book. David Halperin, he was just on the show recently.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
And his whole idea is that it's all kind of a myth. and that we're sort of
Oh,
projecting this in our minds, and we're seeing things. It's a very Jungian religious
yeah.
approach. But the fact that they published his book, I thought was really interesting. I mean,
That's very
it
interesting.
surprised
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. His view sounds a lot like Jacques Vallée's early
Yes.
work.
There's
Yeah.
sort of an intersection there.
And Gunia, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting. See, for us, we are more, one of the missions of the Institute is to actually ground what we're experiencing in material reality.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we do that, so we were talking about having a foot in both places. So the way we ground in material reality is that we are, part of our mission is to support and kind of underwrite and help out people who are extraterrestrial experiencers who want to bring innovations of any kind into the marketplace.
From their experience.
Yes, from their experience. So I spent a long time, actually a couple years, just thinking about, okay, so what would it mean that exoconscious humans, what would it mean that they were successful?
Yeah.
And I had to say that they were able to materialize this conscious knowledge that they gained into some kind of a usable product to help humanity or to solve problems here on Earth, because that's what we do as humans. And that's where, we kind of came up with the idea of exoconscious entrepreneurs, that you'll be expected to, if you're a therapist, or if you're a healer, or if you're an engineer, or you're an educator, then you're expected to co-create these innovations with the beings with whom you're interacting, and bring those innovations into kind of a co-create, we call it Exoconscious Civilization.
Yeah.
So it's not just about this is a myth, or this is just consciousness, or this is unconsciousness, or Jungian. I think all those were really important in terms of defining what human consciousness was all about.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing is moving beyond that and saying, okay, now how do you use it?
Right. Could you set up like is that even a viable idea to set up like an LLC or a fund?
Oh, we have a nonprofit that's structured around that
for experiencers with ideas.
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, we're building it, and it's international, but we have two primary focuses. One is exoconscious entrepreneurs. Yeah. So we're builders and doers. We call ourselves builders and doers. We're building an exoconscious civilization co-created by humans and ETs and multidimensionals.
That is so fascinating.
And the second thing is, our second program is the Exoconscious Academy.
Right.
And the Exoconscious Academy is the educational piece, because in order to make things a reality, in order to bring innovations in, then it's going to be demanded that we teach each other how we're doing it. Is
there a future where this is going to be on the SNP and Nasdaq? I mean,
I hope.
Right? That would be so cool.
Well, that's just what it takes. It takes people. I mean, we're an international group, and we get together, and we're building this international platform to make this happen. And we're looking at, for example, for our conferences, like we haven't had a conference, but our first conference will be a working conference. It will not be sitting in a hotel conference room with a dark, next to people at a table in a dark room. We're going to be actually working. We're going to have breakout sessions of people that are artists. One of the things that we've already kicked off is Mia Faraletto she'd be another good interview, has a conference in North Dakota, in the Black Hills in North Dakota, or South Dakota. Black Hills, which is that? South Dakota, I guess.
No,
You're not doing well in geography. So, Rapid City, South Dakota, outside of there. So she is, she's building an artist in residence there in the Black Hills. And
For experiencers.
part of it's going to be for experiencers. It's going to be for writers and for artists that are experiencers. And so we're going to have, a certain weeks or whatever designated for writers and artists who are experiencers.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just step one. I mean, we're looking at, okay, when I look at something like the coronavirus,
yeah,
because I work for an integrative, he's an MD, but he's an integrative physician. So we deal a lot with parasitic diseases that are very difficult to treat. Deals a lot with Lyme disease, for example, immune diseases, autoimmune diseases, for example. When we look at what's happening in this transhuman world, so we're looking at, chemtrails, we're looking at electromagnetics, we're looking at 5G, we're looking at GMO in our food, we're looking at vaccines, and now we're looking at viruses.
Yeah.
Which I believe many of them are synthetic biology viruses. Okay, so they have an actual 5G component to the virus.
A 5G component? How does that work?
To the virus, because the viruses are built synthetically.
Okay.
So the nanotechnology has a chip in it that responds to the 5G. It's activated by 5G.
Okay.
So I just, that's kind of one of the main areas of research in transhumanism, is to sort of understand that this is happening.
Yeah.
This is rolling out.
That could be profoundly amazing or devastating, right? I mean, it's like biohacking in a way.
Well, it's total biohacking.
Yeah. But
once it's in your body, it goes into, it goes past that blood-brain barrier. It goes into your neural system. It goes into your physical body. So then you're always, you're a device on the Internet of Things at that point.
Well, I was thinking on a more positive side. I mean, is it a way you can use that technology where you sort of use like a viruses to upgrade your genes, your genetics, epigenetics, or something along those lines? Because I think there's some.
Well, a lot of it came out of the Genome Project.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of hope for it, as opposed, I don't know what the reality is going to be, but for sure, once you have a silicon chip in your body, you're a device. You are a device. And now with the virus, you've become a weapon, because you're going to kill other people.
Now, do you really think people are going to subscribe to this? And
I don't think people even know it's gone on. It's been going on for decades.
What about
I used to live across the street from the Genome Project when I lived in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's this big green building across the street? There's this Genome Project.
Well,
there's Genome Project.
That's a really good point. I mean,
people don't know. There was no signage.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't know what's going on.
Yep. And not just the government, but the private sector as well. There's so many advances in science happening as we speak that are going to surprise us, for sure.
So if we go back to this kind of layered GMOs, vaccines, synthetic biology, chemtrails, CERN, rockets, I mean, the space fence that Alana Freeland talks about. If we go back to that, now we look at that now, what kind of diseases, are we going to be looking at in our future? What kind of diseases are our children and grandchildren going to be dealing with? I mean, we already can't deal with autoimmune disease. It's debilitating. Yeah. You send somebody with autoimmune disease to the hospital, or the lead and the heavy metals in our bodies and the mold that's in our bodies, that oftentimes it degenerates into cancer. So our view in the Institute is one of the groups, I'm not going to say the group, but one of the groups that are going to come up with solutions to this. Yeah. And a solution that's going to maintain the human integrity of the human body, integrity of the human consciousness, they're going to be exoconscious humans.
Wow. That's a task force, because I mean, what's happening now with science and in countries, especially like China, where they don't have the same regulations that we have. I mean, I just cannot, and I'm not saying China necessarily just because of the coronavirus, but just as a general rule, other countries that don't have regulations like we do, I mean, in 5-10 years.
But even with regulations, so much is done off the books. I mean, sure, we have regulations and that's all nice, and we've sort of convinced ourselves that, that's going to protect us. But so much is off. I mean, look at the vaccines. Vaccine manufacturers, they're not held responsible for anything.
No.
There's no regulation there.
Well, and here's the thing is that people criticize biohackers, people that are working out of their garage or their shed. These are just individuals. So if you can imagine all the people that work for companies, those people could also have their own garage, and they have better access to better materials and machinery and what have you. So it's not just, me goofing in the backyard doing whatever, right? It's like actual scientists that could be doing stuff in their own homes aside of
what. Sometimes it's people with scientific training.
Exactly, yeah.
Who, because of their extraterrestrial or multidimensional experience, they get this additional information, and they bring things onto market. But it's such a tough road. And what if the extraterrestrial experiencer community got behind these people, tested their products, used their products, moved their products forward? Yeah. I guess I don't want to make it sound like the only reason we're having the Institute is just to be on the defense, like we're in a war or something.
Right.
But that is an aspect to it. But there's also the aspect that I believe if you want to understand something, then you go build it. You don't just sit and read a book and think at your kitchen table and make graphs or whatever. You go and build something. So that's the whole philosophy behind the Institute. If we really want to understand who we are as exoconscious humans, we have to go out and build something with it.
Yeah.
And then we're going to discover things that we hadn't even dreamed possible for us as humans.
Yeah. Well, I think what we'll do is end on a positive note, and I'll put the burden on you. In light of what's going on with coronavirus and the economy, and it's a really stressful time for people. What would you say to people out there who are just really struggling right now?
I'm a real believer in just day by day. It's almost like the AA, the old AA sayings, one day at a time. I think it's one day at a time. You wake up today and move through today and do what you can. And then you wake up tomorrow and tomorrow and do what you can. And also to open yourself always intentionally to guidance that's available to you, either through the ETs or multidimensionals that you've communicated with, or wisdom that comes through nature. I mean, a lot of times, like I'll be leaving a workout class. I was leaving a workout class the other day, and this road runner, this big, was like parked itself on this fence in front of my car. And stood there. Wow. They never stand still. He just stood there and looked at me. He or she just stood there and looked at me. I went, okay, things are going to speed up. So nature's going to bring you information. Just a word that someone says is going to bring you information. And just to stay present and stay in the day that you're given to live, and be grateful. Two things: be grateful and be guided.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. I'm with you. I think a lot of people build up meditation in their head, and it's this big to do, and it's not really. All you have to do is just sit down, just in a quiet space, or put some new age music on, whatever, and just try to not think too much. And then when thoughts come to your mind, just try to let them go, start back at zero. It's that simple. And it really, really helps to calm you down. You only need 5 or 10 minutes of that, and it can really make a difference, at least in my day,
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm with you, one day at a time. I mean, there's like, you know, nothing else you can do. Don't burden yourself with things you can't control. So, all right, great advice. Well, cheers.
Hey,
Rebecca,
thanks,
thank you so much for
Alan.
doing this.
Yeah. It's fun. Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out today and partaking in our paranormal brew. If you like today's content, please like, subscribe, comment down below, and of course, click the notification bell for future content like this. Thank you for all of your support. Be well.